Back again for Trans Day of Visibility at the BC Legislature. We gather right here every year for Trans Day of Visibility on the traditional territories of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples. We also gather here every year for Trans Day of Remembrance. Our goal is to remind politicians that we exist and that the policies they implement affect us, and that in order to craft good policies, we need to be acknowledged, respected, and consulted.
When we talk about trans experiences, we so often just focus on the suffering and the misery and like the fighting part of the fight.
To be queer, to be trans, is to be intersectional and to be affected by more than one system of oppression.
Almost every time that I leave the house, I think about what I'm wearing, I think about how people are going to see me, and I think about what reactions people are going to have. And then I have to go through the mental gymnastics of telling myself that I don't care, or that I can't care, or that I have to be okay with it no matter what. And it is very important that we celebrate this day to show the successes and the importance of being visible in a culture that still wants to deny our existence and deny access to services.
What I really love about Trans Day of Visibility is that we take a moment to appreciate why we transition in the first place, why we fight so hard for the lives that we have.
That's the whole point of today, isn't it? So that we can be who we are without having to worry about how visible we are being, so that eventually at some point I can go outside and I'm not actually thinking about it, despite the fact that I may be exactly as visible as I am today.
To be visible is incredible, and it's also an enormous privilege.
I personally feel an incredible amount of joy from being trans, from being gender fluid, from being non-binary. If we want to talk about suffering, that's what I felt before I was honest about who I am.
We went to Victoria to ask our MLAs 3 questions. Why should gender diverse people support you and your party? How will you ensure BC doesn't go down the path of certain other provinces in restricting gender diverse people's access to life-saving medication and safety in schools? What is an inspiring interaction you've had with a gender diverse person?
Well, I think everybody who cares and understands the importance of human rights should be supporting our party. We're unequivocal in not only where we stand, but also take action and have taken several actions not only to reinforce the importance of gender diversity and the inclusion, but racialized communities and other marginalized communities. We're very clear on where we stand, and I don't think we can afford a party that's not. We will not go down the path of other provinces, not when it comes to restrictions or hateful rhetoric around gender diversity, not when it comes to reproductive justice. This is really important, and I think it's a critical question for people to be asking leading up to the next election. One of the most awesome and inspiring moments I've had is when recently Chilliwack elected the very first ever trans man to the school board. Terry Westerby is a friend and now an elected colleague. I'm so proud of him. I'm so happy that his voice is being heard here. So very inspired by him every day, not to leave anyone out.
The fervor that we're seeing around sex education and safety in schools and other community spaces is intentionally divisive, and it's designed to incite fear and anger. It distracts us from the heart of the issue that trans rights are human rights, and all humans have a right to safety. All humans have a right to be exactly who they are. When gender diverse people's rights are threatened, human rights are threatened. And because our society is currently disproportionately fixated on gender diverse rights right now, they have become a litmus test for how we are approaching human rights. And BC Greens try to be honest brokers. We don't want to be sucked into harmful debate or rhetoric or polarizing conversations. How do we ensure that everybody feels safe in their schools, in their neighborhoods, in their public spaces, and in our community and society? And it is from connection, not anger or fear or hatred, that we are going to be able to have the conversations and move to a place where everybody in BC, that trans people in BC, feel true belonging to be exactly who they are.
With all of the fear and hateful rhetoric happening right now, talking about the good and talking about what we're doing for each other and how we can be here for each other, I think is a really fantastic piece of work.
While we had a response from the BC NDP and the BC Green Party, no one from BC United responded to our requests.
If you're a trans person, it's like playing Russian roulette. Are you going to get a good doctor? Will you be discriminated? Maybe even harmed by a doctor? More funding for supports for support groups. We often are begging and pleading for funding. One group gets it and then another one, and it's not stable. More support for Human Rights Tribunal so they can increase the funding for individuals to apply when they don't have money, but also more access and training for the judges in the Human Rights Tribunal, because generally they have no LGBTQ, let alone any human rights training at all, and it's a real conflict of interest if they don't have any understanding of the work that they're doing.
So in the early days, most trans people just wanted to disappear into cis society because being trans was so stigmatized. Most people told as few people as possible and kept it as secret as possible. Trans visibility then was something to be avoided. It was just too dangerous. For many decades, access to trans medical assistance required 1 to 2 years of what was generally known as a real-life test. The real-life test required trans people to live full-time in stealth. Their experienced gender would never be approved for medical treatment unless they went through this period of enforced hiding. During this period, trans people were also routinely advised by their medical care providers that they would need to move away from their family and friends to start a new life in a new location where no one would know their past.
Existence can be utterly exhausting in the world right now, a burden that is often heaviest for those who are the most equity deserving. For many within our transgender community, visibility is not merely a choice, but an act of bravery in the face of discrimination and misunderstanding. In 2023, the USA introduced a disproportionate 600 bills against trans people. This year, they have already introduced 527, and it is not yet April. Our visibility has increased, but that does not mean safety, and it certainly does not mean equity.
Trans Day of Visibility is more than a photo op. Today is a day to celebrate gender diverse people and for us to take up space in a world that tries to suppress us. Because in a world that tells us we shouldn't exist, existence itself becomes an act of defiance.
While Trans Day of Visibility might serve as a beacon of hope and empowerment, we must not forget the countless individuals who continue to face marginalization, violence, and prejudice simply for being their authentic selves. Let us commit ourselves to fostering a society where every individual is valued, respected, and embraced for who they are, regardless of gender identity or expression.
Transgender Day of Visibility was started in 2009 by Rachel Crandall in Michigan as a counterbalance to Transgender Day of Remembrance, which mourned the murders of transgender people. In addition to remembering our dead, we celebrate our lives, knowing that still today, trans people are being murdered, and still today, not everybody has that privilege of being able to be visible. It's not safe for everybody to be visible.
This truth about me that I couldn't quite deny or fit anywhere was always coming through in the things that I'm making and the stories that I'm telling. What I am taking from this experience, though, is that, yeah, gender is kind of absurd, isn't it? Why am I not allowed to have fun with that? Why am I not allowed to play with that? As a non-binary person, all I'm telling you is that I am not binary, right? Like, I'm not a man, I'm not a woman, but that doesn't tell you anything about what I am. When you look in the mirror and you're like, oh, being me is awesome, actually. I love this. What is happening? What does that feel like? I saw narratives of trans people, mostly are stories of suffering. And those are important stories to tell because we endure so much. When I came out to my grandmother, she was heartbroken because she thought I had condemned myself to a life of misery. And I couldn't really blame her because she hadn't seen anything out in the world that told her the reason I'm doing this is because it makes me happy. Joy and happiness often get mixed up. So let's define our terms. Happiness is the emotion that happens to us in the moment, where joy is something you cultivate and is often long-lasting. Both are good feelings, but joy is this constant companion that lives with you. I'm here to talk about art and trans joy and the joy that can come through art and the art can come through the joy of being trans. For many of us in the gender diverse community, we know what it feels like
to be disregarded by family, friends, to not be acknowledged for our knowledge or our skills. Each of us has experienced some, if not all of these, to lesser or greater degrees. Whatever lights you up, do it. Help others lift themselves up. There are gifts in every moment, in every time when you connect with a human or other being, nature, art, cultivating those loving, supportive relationships. Joy can be that loving companion that gets us through the hardest times.
This is a life that is not just worth living, but worth enjoying. I really want to encourage everyone here today to hold space for your pain and the fights that you fought. And I want you to remember why. The reason that we do this is because of how happy it makes us. And because it is a happiness that is so true, it can't be denied, even when so many of us really tried.
And there is still so much more that needs to be done to make the world into what it should be for all kinds of people.
Like the equinox, the traditional and ongoing role of Two-Spirit people is to bring balance to society. And let me tell you, we could use some balance these days as we see hatred and discrimination towards Two-Spirit and trans people reaching heights we haven't seen in decades. Across Canada, we are seeing organized and deliberate attempts to spread mis- and disinformation about access to medical care for trans youth. This past September, I stood right here on this lawn and watched as anti-trans organizers demanded an end to the medical care that saved my life. And across Canada, we're seeing the rights that we fought for be stripped back one by one. We queer people know this tactic well. The conflation of queerness and concern for children is as old as homophobia itself. But this time, the fear-mongering can't detract from the irrefutable fact that trans-affirming medical care saves lives.
This is an election year in BC, and as provinces across Canada seek to persecute gender-diverse people, and we see hate propaganda campaigns launched in opposition to us, it's more important than ever that our MLA candidates clarify how they intend to support and protect gender-diverse people.
When I talk to other queer and trans organizers across the province, I hear so many everyday stories of resistance. The peer groups being held in someone's living room, the passing on of gender-affirming wear from one trans person to another, and the allies who hold each other accountable to affirming trans youth's gender. Trans people, especially trans women of color, experience the consequences of hypervisibility in a world that is often not safe for us. This Trans Day visibility, I want to call on our allies to make yourselves visible by speaking out publicly against transphobia and transmisogyny.
Visibility matters. The burden of that can hopefully be given to some of our allies to step up, where it's safer for you to step up and say, these are my pronouns, what are yours? Put a progress flag on your laptop, on your office door. Put your pronouns in your bios. Be visible for us.
You're our neighbors, our friends, our siblings, our loved ones. I see non-binary and trans leadership in public service, in education, in healthcare, in arts. Celebrating you is such a vital piece of the critical work that creates opportunities for trans kids, adults, and seniors to thrive. I and we in government will recognize and uplift the experience and the voices of transgender people to support people's rights and improve supports for people to access the life-saving healthcare and surgeries that they need. And we will, and I commit to, making sure that our schools are safe and welcoming spaces for all students every day.
We're going to raise the transgender flag.
Now, our organizations aren't just about holding politicians accountable. We offer ourselves to politicians as a resource for information about gender-diverse people, and we seek to connect them with gender-diverse people in their communities. We also serve as a resource to the community, providing wellness programming for youth, elders, and pregnant individuals.
Every year, we deliver packages to our MLAs, packages that look like this one right here. Our goal is to try to encourage our politicians to have a conversation with trans people in their ridings, to learn more about what it means to be trans, and to make sure that we're consulted when it comes to policies that may have an effect on us. When an MLA opens up one of these packages, they will find a few different things. To begin with, they're going to find this directory right here. We also have a number of flyers in here. We have one for our Three Mothers Medicine Camp. This is designed for youth, elders, and people who are pregnant. We have a community wellness worker program. We also have a flyer for our directory, and that's if you're interested in advertising in our directory, if you're interested in subscribing to receive the directory, this will have all of the information that you need to know about that. Now, we're hoping when we give these to MLAs that they're going to be allies of ours, and they're going to be interested in flying a Progress Pride flag. So, of course, we have a Progress Pride flag. Then we have one of these files. There's my business card right there. We do this in partnership with the Flag Shop. I'm a social justice ambassador for the Flag Shop, and so I'm wearing a couple of different hats in this scenario. We have a letter that we've written to all of the MLAs. This is encouraging MLAs again to consult trans people and to make sure that they are active allies and not just performative allies. We then have a number of different sheets that are resources, from language that you want to use to maps of Canada and the provinces that are less accepting of trans people, more accepting of trans people. We do not want BC to turn red in this case. We have the trusty gender unicorn for anyone who wants a basic understanding of gender identity and gender expression. The gender unicorn is a great place to start. We have statistics about what it's like to be queer in rural areas of British Columbia. And in case you were wondering, it's not always the best. And again, just some more flyers about language. Now I'm going to take a moment to read this letter to you because I think it's important that you all know the letters that we're sending to our MLAs. 2024 is an election year. You know this, we know this, and gender diverse people across British Columbia know this. Your party has shown up for us in the past, but will you continue to? This is the question on the minds of transgender and non-binary people as provinces across Canada seek to persecute us. We need assurances that you and your party won't follow in the steps of provinces like Alberta, Saskatchewan, and New Brunswick. In the coming months, our communities will be looking closely at how your party positions itself. We will look for statements you make in support of gender diverse people, as well as silence when our communities need support. We will research your party's history of supporting gender diverse people through actions, not words. In the coming months, we will look to your personal record to see what you stand for as an individual. What is your voting record on related issues? Have you participated in our Trans Day of Visibility and Trans Day of Remembrance initiatives? Have you opposed your party when they have not supported us? It is not good enough to call yourself an ally. It is not good enough to show up for an annual photo op with us. It is not good enough to speak platitudes in the legislature. We need you to make tangible promises. We need you to engage with gender diverse people in your riding. We need you to address systemic issues like housing affordability, workplace discrimination, mental health and dental coverage, among many others, because issues like these disproportionately affect our communities. There is no party in British Columbia at this time that clearly displays a passion for advocating on behalf of gender diverse people. Some parties have been more supportive than others, but none currently stand out as champions. With that in mind, you have an opportunity to earn our votes. Show us you care and that you will work to serve our best interests. And our votes are yours.
Come and check out Tivine's tent, check out the resources.
We left 87 packages at the BC Legislature's mailroom for MLAs across BC.
Hi there. Hi, how are you doing?
The partnership with the Flag Shop in Tivine.
Later tonight, there is a show at the Vicious Poodle.